Hello, hi, and welcome. If you're new here, my name is Sarah, and this is Wicked Reading. And we are joined today by Miss Winnie in the background taking a nap. A couple of things to address before we get into the video. This video is going to be my June wrap-up, but a couple of things to address. So, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I missed my last upload, and then I uploaded on a Sunday, and then I didn't upload on Wednesday, and I don't know if this video is going to go up Sunday or Wednesday. We'll see. I am in the midst of moving. I've moved. I'm fully in my new house, but it is a disaster. I totally underestimated how long it would take to get settled into a home because we haven't really even started unpacking a lot of our boxes because my library room is still being done. So that's why I'm sitting in front of the couch right now. I don't have a reading library filming space yet. It is still being done. I was kind of trying to put this off until I had that, but that's taking longer than I thought. So I was like, I just got to sit down and do my June wrap up before I forget all these books. So yeah, my scheduling has been really bad recently because of that, because I keep thinking that I'm going to have these spaces that I don't have yet, which is fine. It is what it is. But yeah, the moving process has taken way longer than your girl anticipated. So that being said, it will continue to be a little bit wonky for the next couple weeks. Hopefully that's it. I'm hoping to get on a good schedule once my spaces are done and be back on track to my minimum of once a week uploading on Wednesdays and sometimes having a sneaky Sunday upload. But bear with me for now. Make sure the notification bell's on if you don't have it on because it's a little bit chaotic at the moment. And I apologize, and I also appreciate everybody who has been patient and doesn't mind. That being said as well, thank you so much for helping me hit 6,000 subscribers. I truly would have never anticipated doing that. So thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. Thank you. And I'm sorry that you're joining at a bit of a chaotic moment for me, but I will be back on track as soon as I can. So also June was a lot of moving and pre-moving stuff. So most of my June was audiobook, most of it. I think I only read one physical book, I want to say. I'll know for sure once we're going through the books, but I'm pretty sure I only read one book physically. Well, I did start a book on ebook, but I didn't finish it by June. But I only read one book physically, and I had already started it in May. So my reading was definitely not the best. We went from May being my highest read month to now June being my lowest read month. Hopefully July's not lower, but I am filming this a decent way into July and I have not read that many books still. But anyways, I'm losing focus because I haven't sat in front of a camera for a bit, but let's actually get into the purpose of this video. So I start my wrap-ups with my stats, which I keep through Storygraph, and then I go through the books in the order of which I read them. So let's start with the stats. So in June, I ended up reading a total of 7 books, which equated to 2,539 pages. So yes, that is my lowest read month so far, but 7 books is still a decent amount. So it is what it is. My top moods for the month were dark and tense, which are very typical for me. So the majority of the books that I read were between 300 and 499 pages. So despite me reading a slightly lower amount of books, I read higher page count books. That was 5 books of the 7 that I read. And then the last 2 were under 300 pages, making up 29%. My top genre was horror, followed by romance. I did listen to a contemporary romance. It was the last book that I read, so it's a very popular one. And then the format, I only physically read, although this is low because it didn't count the book that I started, but I only technically physically read 418 pages. Most of my reading was done through audiobook, like I said, and it makes up 86%. This is the first month ever that I have listened to audiobooks more than I physically read or digitally read with my eyeballs. I did rate all of the books that I read in June, and my average rating was 3.5 stars with a range from 2.5 to 5-star reads. I had 1 5-star book, 2 2.5-star reads, and then Step in the Middle. So let's get into the books. The very first book that I listened to in June was Ling Han by A.I. Zhang. This is a very, very quick audiobook listen. I want to say the audiobook was a total of 5 hours, but a lot of this book is not actually the Ling Han story. There's a lot of short stories in like the second half of this book pretty much. So the actual audiobook was maybe 2.5 hours. In this story, we are following our main character. I don't remember her name anymore, sorry. But we are following her as her family moves to this place called home. And in this neighborhood, if you are able to get a house and live in a house there, you will be visited by ghost of a loved one. So our main character's family is there because her younger brother died. And so it is a very grief-driven, grief horror type of book. Now, the premise of this book, I really enjoy. And I really like the idea of this book. I think it was very unique, having this place called home and being visited by loved ones and the grieving process. I don't know. I do still enjoy grief horror. I do think it is starting to be overdone, but I am still in the phase of enjoying grief horror, and I really like the way that this one was approached. I really enjoy seeing the different types of manifestations of grief. One of the characters in the story I thought was very interesting, and I really loved that aspect. She actually kind of mostly symbolized grieving a past self and kind of grieving who you used to be. And I thought that that was very interesting, and I really liked that that was thrown in there. But at the same time, I wish this book did a little bit more. Granted, it is a short story, but there were certain things and certain themes that did start to feel a bit repetitive, and I felt like it could have done a little bit more. I do feel like I liked this book more after I finished reading it versus while I was reading it, because once I was done reading it, I was able to think about it a little bit more, and specifically with that character that really kind of symbolized losing yourself and grieving, your old life. I appreciated her aspect of the story so much more after the book was done. So I think that this is a book that for me personally was definitely better once I was finished with it and once I was able to think about it. And I might more so like the book if I reread it, going in with my new perspective and going in more analytically rather than just getting the surface of the story. But yeah, I did enjoy it. It was a good listen, but at the same time, while I was listening to it, I wanted more from it. So I ended up giving it 3.5. I do still recommend it if you are somebody who likes grief horror, if you want to read like a shorter story. But yeah, I understand that a lot of people are kind of getting over the grief horror thing, but I'm still in it. I'm still enjoying it. After that, I listened to Ghost Station by S.A. Barnes. I would have DNF'd this if I wasn't pushing through to finish it so I can do my NetGalley rating of it and my NetGalley feedback, because I do have it on NetGalley. Now that I'm saying that, I don't think I ever even did my NetGalley feedback. I'll have to go and check. But that is solely the only reason that I finished this book. Pretty much this book is sold as space horror, and we follow our main character who is pretty much very interested in this particular disease that a lot of astronauts will get, kind of like cabin fever, and they'll get this sickness, I forget what it's called, but they'll get it and they start to hallucinate, and they kind of will hurt themselves or hurt other people. And our main character joins this voyage that is taking place after this huge massacre occurred due to this illness, where this person killed, I don't know, like 20 people or something crazy, like killed their whole crew. And then this main character, which again, sorry, I forget her name, but she goes on a voyage with these astronauts, I don't know, and she's kind of there as like the therapist to make sure that nobody else gets this sickness. Anyways, this book was so boring to me. I just very much didn't anticipate how much this book was going to focus on family drama, on our main character. And I like a character-driven story. Do not get me wrong. I love a character-driven story, but this approach was just us being in this character's head. She's constantly just like hinting at her past without ever fully saying it until she says it. So we're just being dragged along for so much of this book. So much of this book was so boring. I don't think anything happened until maybe like 60% of the way in. I know that there was a part at 80% because I checked my audiobook. There was a moment at 80% in that I liked it, and then it went away again. But so much of this book was dragged out as this character kind of dealing with family drama, but not fully telling us what the family drama was and like her past, and it just wasn't good. And I did actually really like, though, the part where the space horror came in. I think it was around the 80% mark. There is a moment where space horror does actually happen, but then it just goes away. It comes and it goes. I was so mad. I was so mad because that aspect was really cool. And I really liked the idea of that. And I just wish the book was actually that part of the story expanded instead of our character background being so expanded, because it was not even like an interesting character background. I don't know. I didn't like the main character. I did not care about her family drama and her inner thoughts at all, because they just weren't very interesting and weren't very reflective. And yeah, I wish it leaned more into the psychological stuff and the space stuff that it kind of touched a little bit. So overall, this story was mostly boring, most of it very forgettable, and I didn't really care about it. So I gave it 2.5 stars. After that, I listened to Old Country by Matt Query and Harrison Query. They are brothers that write together. I, of course, listened to this on audiobook, and I really, really enjoyed it when I started it. I was really excited. I thought I was going to really love this book. I enjoyed the way that the book opened, and I liked our characters, even though the main guy, he's like annoying, but he's kind of like supposed to be annoying, I think. And he has like PTSD because he's ex-military, and I enjoyed that aspect. I don't read very many books where that's a thing, so I enjoyed and appreciated that I was reading a character like that for once. And yeah, I liked how that tied into the story. I think that was interesting and important. And yeah, I don't see that representation in a lot of the books that I tend to pick up, so I liked it. But again, this book ended up just getting very, very boring. Oh, I didn't tell you guys what this is about. Sorry. So in the story, we pretty much are following a husband and a wife who finally buy a house, and they're super excited. It's on this really cool land and really big land, and it's kind of isolated, but not super isolated. Like, they interact with their neighbors and everything, but it's a very quaint, foresty area, very different than their city living, and they're just happy to do this and have a home. And they get the home and stuff starts to be weird, I guess. So I'll leave you with that. I think that the main issue with this book for me was the horror aspect of this book. There is no mystery to it. These people move into their home. Their neighbors are immediately telling them what the horror of the story is, what the element is. They are immediately made aware of everything to expect. And instead of expecting it, they're kind of like, la la la, whatever, they're crazy. And it happens. And then it happens again. And then it happens again. And then it happens again. And it's a very cyclical, seasonal-based supernatural element, which sounds cool. And it's cool on paper, but not in the book. After a while, it was just very repetitive because it was the same song and dance each time. These characters kind of being like, well, maybe it won't happen this season, but it happens exactly as the neighbors say it's going to happen. So there was an extreme lack of mystery for the reader. And at that point, I was getting annoyed of the characters. So that was a big bummer. And then there was like this like side subplot with, do we want kids? Do we not want kids? And like that was just unnecessary because it was also just, it wasn't deep or complex in any way. Okay, my battery died. So anyways, as I was saying, there was like this, shouldn't we have kids? That wasn't a very complex or interesting part of the story either. So it just added nothing. It didn't add conflict or anything like that. So yeah, it was the same kind of thing as Ghost Station. It just ended up being very boring. So I gave it 2.5 stars. It wasn't horrible, but I was just kind of like, I really could have gone without listening to it. So there's that. So next is the only physical book that I read, and I don't even have it because it's in a box somewhere, and that is A Fate Inked in Blood by Danielle Jensen. This is pretty much a fantasy romance that ties in a lot of Viking and Norse mythology. So I ended up really enjoying this one. Yay, I had a good time with this. I was kind of preemptively told that it was just kind of like book candy, but I thought it was like a little bit better than book candy. I feel like that's kind of downplaying the story a little bit. I just really enjoyed how the story was set up. It was quite violent at times, which I enjoyed. I thought it was good. I liked the progression of the relationship as well. I thought it was very well done. I will say I did anticipate the ending and what the, I don't want to say like twist, but where the cliffhanger was likely going to be. I did anticipate what the conflict would end up being to open the rest of the series with. I don't know how many books this series is supposed to be. I don't even know the name of the series, to be honest. But, I think it's like the unfated something. But I still enjoyed it nonetheless. I did enjoy the romance progression, like I said, but also the romantic parts with Spice and the smutty parts. I enjoyed that. I think that it was very well balanced. I have a really big issue with romantasy sometimes. I need like the perfect amount of spice and plot balance. Like it needs to be so perfect for me to enjoy it, because the second that there's too much smut, I don't care. For me, I know this is like unpopular as hell, but for me, the less smut, the better. I am a slow burn, tension, yearning type of reader. If they don't hook up until book 3, I am not mad about it. I am not mad about it. So yeah, I liked the balance of it. And I liked the plot devices. I liked what our character went through. There were some irritating moments, I will say, where, I don't know, she felt very badass sometimes, and then other times she felt very like she wasn't doing what I would think that she would do. But I don't know. I enjoyed it. It was a fun time. I gave it 4 stars. I definitely will be reading the rest of the series. And I really liked the Norse mythology going into it as well. How accurate it is, I have no idea. But I enjoyed it. So 4 stars. So the next one that I listened to was The Invocations by Crystal Sutherland. This book, we are following 3 girls who have very different lifestyles. One of our girls is actually the daughter of like a billionaire. Another girl is somebody who creates invocations. And the other one is somebody whose sister went missing and she wants to bring her back from the dead with witchcraft. So this is a very witchy book. This is a YA horror. Our 3 girls end up crossing paths and they realize that there is a pattern of girls going missing who kind of have connections in some way or another to these girls. And they are trying to kind of figure out what the connection is, why they're missing, who's going after them, yada yada. So I really, really enjoyed this one. Crystal Sutherland, girl, you are my only go-to YA author, period. The way she writes, she has like a thing for, which I do too, so this is why she works for me so much. She has a thing for describing decay, decomp, just nasty sores and pus and festering things. She has such a way to describe all of that. And I love it. That stuff, I love it. I love those descriptions. And I know that that's like nasty, but I love stuff that ties in death and decay and nature and all of that. I don't know. I'm drawn to it. I love the description of it. Obviously, it's gross. But it's like gross in a good way for me. Like it just works. And it makes the story interesting. And this book ties in a lot of that, in addition to having all of these witchy things going on. And there's a lot of commentary in this book about girlhood and womanhood and societal standards and patriarchy and all of that I really, really enjoyed, and I think is really important to have in YA books. The themes were at times a bit heavy-handed, but it's YA. I do expect YAs to have more of a heavy-handed, on-the-nose type of theme, and I don't know, I still think that she did it very well nonetheless. And yeah, I enjoyed it. I loved the characters. I loved all of the characters, like all the main girls. I loved them. I loved their interactions with each other. It was a great listen. I thought the audiobook was so good, and I highly recommend it. This was my only 5-star of the month. I think it just had a lot going for it. And I have actually the special edition from Evernight, which I wish I could show you guys. It's the perfect opportunity, but again, it's packed up somewhere. It's a beautiful edition. I'm so glad I bought it because I actually bought it before I read this book, but I'm really glad I have that. If you're somebody who is very skeptical about YA horror, but you really like nature, decay, very beautiful yet grotesque books, she nails it. She is just an absolute queen of her art. Then I listened to Mother Thing by Ainsley Hogarth. This was my first Ainsley Hogarth, and she is becoming a new favorite author for me. I'm actually listening to Normal Women by her right now, which I won't talk about because that's for my July wrap up, but that tells you how much I enjoyed this one. So Mother Thing is pretty much pitched as like a darkly funny horror novel in which this woman starts to become haunted by her dead mother-in-law. But don't think that it's a ghost story, because like it's not really, like it kind of is, but like not really. The main point of this book is stream of consciousness, unhinged mommy issues. Our main character, she's got mommy issues. Her husband has mommy issues. She gets increasingly more unhinged as the story goes. You're following her stream of consciousness, and I loved it. I had such a good time with this. It is very funny at times. It gets quite raunchy at times, and the way that this book ended, oh my God, like the final shebang of this book was crazy. And I loved it. The audiobook narrator, I think, did a very, very good job. I did give this 4.5 because there were moments that I think I don't know. Sometimes when I read an audiobook or listen to an audiobook, I don't mind doing a 5-star, like the Invocations. But I don't know. I find a lot of times, even if I think that the book might have been 5 stars, I will give it 4.5 because the audiobook, just because I will always and forever, I think, just connect a little bit more to a physical read for me. So I think I might try to reread this one physically. I did already buy a secondhand copy from Pango Books because I loved it. So I think I might try to reread that physically in like a couple months, kind of like not as soon as I finished it on audiobook. And it might end up being a 5-star through that. But for whatever reason, I just felt like I couldn't give it 5 stars. I don't know. Don't ask me because I just gave Invocations 5 stars. But for whatever reason, sometimes an audiobook will hold me back from doing that. But this book is definitely not going to be for everybody. Like I said, it's very stream of consciousness. It's very just weird. The writing though, I loved the writing. It very much kind of reminded me, obviously a totally different story, situation, character in general, but if you listened to or read Big Swiss by, I want to say Jen Began, it was kind of in that territory where it had a similar tone, where it was like our main character would be talking about one thing and then she's having this like side tangent thought about this other thing, obviously thinking about very different things, but still in that same type of cadence. The melody of their thoughts, I don't even know how to describe it, but it felt very similar in that way, but again with completely different themes, completely different characters, but just that writing style, I feel like those were kind of similar in that way. So, and I loved Big Swiss as well. So I don't know. I had a great time with this one, but I can definitely see it not being for everybody. But if you want to read a stream of consciousness story about a woman with unhinged mommy issues, this is the book for you. I loved it. And I'm really glad I did because I was interested in it when it came out last year, but I had heard kind of mixed things, although I didn't hear that many things, but the few things I did hear weren't the best. But you know what? It turns out I like unpopular books way more often than I like popular books. That is the perfect segue to talk about the last book that I read in June, and that was Butcher and Blackbird by Brynne Weaver. If you haven't heard of this yet, it is an extremely popular contemporary romance with two serial killers that specifically kill other serial killers. So I was convinced, and I thought I was going to love this book. I almost bought it because I was that convinced I was going to love it because everybody's loving it. The Goodreads rating is over 4 stars. And, you know, I didn't hate it. But this kind of goes along with what I was talking about with A Fatington Blood. I ended up becoming so bored with this story. So bored. I really liked the way it started. I did think that the serial killer stuff was interesting and cool, and you can definitely see where some of these serial killers of the book were inspired by horror icon serial killers. Like one of the killers were definitely modeled after like Hannibal Lecter, Silence of the Lambs. Another one was definitely kind of like Texas Chainsaw coded. So I enjoyed those aspects. And the book was pretty funny, and I really enjoyed the man's narration. He's got an Irish accent. Did really enjoy that. But there's a lot of time jumps, which I understand are necessary, but also when there's so many of them, it takes me out of a story. So there's a lot of time jumps, and then it's a lot of both characters in their POVs, because it is a dual POV. It's a lot of the characters talking about how much of a crush they have on the other character. So for me, it's really boring, borderline annoying to constantly listen to these two people saying how much they like each other and how much they don't think that the other person likes each other for like so long. It's like, okay, like you guys both like each other, do something about it. Like I can't stay in that for so long. A little bit of it, fine. We all have those moments where we're like, oh, like I like him but I don't want to say anything, blah, blah. That's totally natural, but like it lasted too long in this book for me. I don't read a lot of romance though, so take it with a grain of salt. That being said, once they finally got together, yay, finally, I was also bored. I was very bored. There's a lot of smut, and that got boring to me. I didn't like the characters that much individually, especially the girl. She just like didn't have her own thing. And at least the guy was given, he's also like a chef and he has a restaurant. So he was like given his own thing. I don't feel like the girl character was given any additional character attributes other than she only has one friend, which like relatable, but I feel like the female character just wasn't written as well as I like my female characters to be written. I did like him. I think he was written well. I was entertained enough, but I was a bit over it by the end. It was a little more ushy-gushy, I guess, than I like. This is bad, but I prefer reading toxic relationships and where there's a little bit more conflict, and I don't know. It didn't work for me at all as much as I expected. Now I will say, I will still read the second book, Leather and Lark, because I think that already the interactions between those two characters that we kind of got a idea of in Butcher and Blackbird, I think I will like that better. But yeah, anyways, I'm rambling now. I'm sad that it didn't work for me. I thought I would love it. I gave it 3 stars. It wasn't horrible, but definitely not my favorite dynamic and not my favorite balance when it comes to stories. But this is a contemporary romance. I have not read very many of those, so unfortunately I didn't love it the way a lot of other people do, but I read it. So that was everything that I read and listened to in June. Let me know what your favorite book of June was in the comments down below. I would love to know. If you have nothing else to say but want to let me know that you were here, leave a witchy emoji down below for the invocations. If you haven't yet, please give the video a like, subscribe for future content, turn on the bell notification, all the fun YouTube things that help your girl out. And I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye!